All right, Mark here, folks. I've been researching, studying from about 12:30. It's now, what time is it? 7 o'clock. Yeah, so that's damn. Time flies when I'm having fun. So I want to talk real quick about like why it's so difficult to break addictions and habitual patterns, right? Why habitual patterns are so difficult for us to break, and why addictions are so difficult to break. And the addiction can be towards anything. Uh, it could be alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be it could be tangible, intangible, obsessive thoughts, any kind of addiction. People are addicted to thinking, right? Uh, so any kind of addiction. Why are addictions? Why are habits so difficult to break? All right. Now, what I'm going to talk about is a little bit esoteric, right? It's esoteric means like concealed or secret knowledge, right? Or information that is only known by a selective few. So it's esoteric. This information is esoteric or esoteric, however you pronounce it. And so why are addictions so difficult to break? Okay, first we must understand this, that an addiction is anything that you cannot on your own volition release. I'll say that again. An addiction is anything that on your own cognitive volition you cannot release. And I want to add to that definition by saying that the addiction it's not a tangible addiction. Okay? It's not something that be felt or touched. It's not a physical addiction. The addiction has its inception in what's called thought forms. Thought forms are repeated thought patterns that takes on a form, hence thought form. And those forms in esoteric knowledge would be considered entities uh, that have their own individual life. So a thought that you have given life to, you have germinated, you have metastasized a tiny seed into now a giant thought form tree. And once that thought form takes root, it begins. See, thought forms are energy, right? Because your thoughts are electromagnetic in nature and quality. So your thought forms are energy, right? So you develop these thought forms, so you're thinking about, let's just say smoking, right? So it's thought because everything starts has its inception with a thought. So you're around your friends or peers or whatever the case may be, and you're thinking about smoking, so you begin to smoke. And this is 20 years from this point, 20 years preceding this point, so 20 years ago, and you start smoking or you start drinking or you become addicted to whatever, and so it has its inception as a thought. And what happened is with a thought form, once a thought becomes a thought form, it because it's energy, it begins to collapse in on itself. And what I mean by collapse in on itself is that it began to attract other thought forms to itself. And it because it's energy, it's constantly adding substance to itself. So now you create the thought of being with this woman or being with this guy or having this drink or having that drug or trying something that's alien or foreign to you. And now what happens, you are the instigator. But once you instigate, the thought form becomes autonomous. It becomes autonomous. So now it governs itself. And this is done at a negligible level, meaning beyond your senses, you're not aware of it. It's totally non existent in terms of your consciousness. In terms of your consciousness, this is not a recognizable or cognizant uh, activity. The thought form's activity is going on beneath the senses. So it's not you're not cognizant of it, you're not conscious of it, it's negligible. But it's still transpiring. Look, let me tell you something. For people who listen to this video and would say this guy's nuts, this guy's off his rockers, there are over I think 1 trillion creatures on the planet. That's with a T. 1 trillion. Over a trillion creatures on this planet. Now I know when a person hear that a trillion creatures on Earth, doesn't sound realistic, right? A trillion creatures on this planet, right? Now you think about, I don't know, most people probably think about the zoo, they think about the animal planet, they think about, animals in the wild, right? They make up creatures, all creatures. That's not the creatures I'm talking about. The trillion creatures that's on this planet are called microorganisms, and and that's as far as I'm going to go. I'm not going to go deep into that field of study, but microbes are microorganisms that makes up trillions of creatures on this planet. I bring that up to say this to illustrate this point. We cannot see microbes with our naked eyes. Microorganisms, you need devices, microscopes. You can't see them with your naked eyes. So if I could be looking around a room or walk into an area outside, and I will never ever know that these microbes are present, but they're there. You see what I'm saying? Me not being conscious or cognizant of their existence does not deny or disprove or nullify or negate their existence. I say that to say, just because we don't see the thought forms, which are entities that have an existence, does not negate nor nullify their existence. I'm sure you guys connect those dots. They're not hard. They're very easy to connect. So getting back on point, these so we create these thought forms. We have the thought forms. It's an inception, and they're created by the mechanism of our imagination, right? Good or bad, we create them, and sometimes a lot of them are created unconsciously. When you first think to have a smoke or to have a drink, you're not thinking, "Oh, I'm going to create this thought form that's going to destroy my kidneys 10 years hence," or "I'm going to create this thought form that's going to give me lung cancer, 15, 5, 10 years out." Right? You don't consciously think like that. So you're creating a thought form unconsciously. And again, the thought form, it becomes autonomous, and it seeks out like thought forms and coagulate. Coagulate just means to combine and solidify. So there's a congenial process and a coagulation that goes on. Once this happens, these thought forms become very destructive because now they ingratiate themselves into your etheric body, right? Into your aura. They ingratiate themselves into your aura, and because your aura as well is energy. And remember, folks, the first law of thermodynamics. What's the first law? Conservation of mass, or the conservation of energy. It's never destroyed nor created. It simply transforms, transmutes, or takes different shapes and or forms. Right? So because of that law of thermodynamics, right, we got to understand that once you form a pattern thinking, which becomes a thought form. And the thought form, uh, once created, it exists on its own in the ethereal plane or in the ethereal realm, and it seeks out thought forms like itself because in that plane, like attracts like and coagulates, coalesces, comes together and solidifies. Not solidifying in the sense of a solid that you can touch, see, and feel, but solidifies in the sense of in energetic vibration because in the ethereal or in the invisible realm everything is based on vibrational frequencies and intensification and amplification, therefore it strengthens resonance, right? There's a resonance, right? So there's a resonating effect, which means amplifying in strength. So the thought form begins to resonate. It finds resonance with other like thought forms and or like-minded thought forms, and then it begins to amplify and to strengthen. And now you have what's called a habit that is now ingratiated in your aura, which is your fields. And here's the dangerous thing: if it's a bad habit that you created, it's going to resonate around your lower sacral chakra, right? Because that is the emotional chakra, which is right around your navel. I spoke about that in previous videos. And the problem with that is your emotions. You ever hear them say, like, you have to have passion when you're doing something, right? You have to add emotion. Like, actors are very adept and astute. They're very adept at channeling their emotions into their plays or into their theater. And we all been to theaters. We all seen movies that makes you cry. Why do you cry? Because of the emotional aspect or the emotional body that the actor projects and channels into the character. So your emotional powers or your emotional body, which is one of your multidimensional self, is extremely powerful, extremely, exceedingly powerful. And so the problem now with the thought form, if it's negative and it's residing around your sacral chakra, which is where they, like I said in previous videos, most of the negative energies reside around your navel, because that's the port, it's an entry point of your physical body. And so the sacral chakra corresponds with 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 the lower energy. The reason why it's lower energy is not that it's bad either, because remember, lo- negative energy is not necessarily bad. It works with positive, yin and the yang. It balances out the universe. But here's the big but. The lower energy chakra, when thought forms that are negative starts to reside and take residence in these areas, because again, it's a lower chakra, therefore it has a lower vibratory rate. If it has a lower vibration, that means it's negative. And therefore, you're going to continue to create, reinforce, amplify, and strengthen the habit, which is whatever it is: drinking, smoking, fornication, promiscuity, prostitution, drugs. Again, use your imagination. So the reason, here's the crux of this video, the meat and the potatoes. So the reason why habits are so difficult to break, you ready for this? Hold on to your rocker. The thought form inherently is magnets. Each thought form, built into the thought form, inherently, in its essence, in its nature, is magnetism. There is a magnetic aspect within the thought form. Electromagnetic energy, electricity, electromagnetic magnets. So within the thought form, there is a magnetic aspect that is wired into the DNA of the thought form. And therefore, that magnetism, folks, it's always going to pull. It's called a propensity pull. A propensity pull. I'll say it again. It's called a propensity pull. You will always be pulled to that bottle of alcohol, to that woman, to that guy, to that club, to that lifestyle, whatever it is that has manufactured itself in the form of a thought form, is going to always have a organic, innate magnetic effect on you, the person. And if you're not conscious of this, which most people are, let's be honest, most people are. If you're not cognizant of uh, these elements or aspects of life, right? These spiritual aspects or spiritual qualities of life. If you haven't conditioned yourself to understand this, to study this stuff, to learn this stuff, then you will forever be victimized by this stuff. You will forever be tossed to and fro by the elements. Till next time. Hope this video was somewhat helpful. If you like it, you know what to do. Peace.